When we learn a certain thing, we can learn it superficially, right? But then there's a next level where you actually implement it and you live as though you are it. So that's embodiment. That's the embodiment of knowing yourself to such an extent that you have already become it.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. We are over 200 now, so all this is like a new chapter. My beautiful guest today is a lady who has all sorts of things up her sleeve. She is a systemic therapist, a leadership and authenticity coach, an empowerment and embodiment coach. I'm going to want to know all of these things, what they mean. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, Hélène Alexi Ioannides.
Thank you for having me, Elizabeth. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I know that you're a very interesting lady. I listened to you recently at Mindex when you were talking about your journey. I was very touched. And I also noticed that you were a little nervous because I was at the same place last year and I was very nervous. And I have been speaking a lot. Why were you nervous?
First of all, that's the first time I've actually got up on stage and given a full-on speech. So that's my first public speaking.
Okay.
15-minute long speech.
Yeah.
And it was also a very personal story. So there's many parts of it that I've never shared before. So getting up on stage and sharing that kind of vulnerability from the things that I've been through can be very nerve-wracking and also very healing in the same time.
How did you feel afterwards when it was done?
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you did a great job. I'm not because I know I'm a speaker and I know, I'm sure most people wouldn't have noticed that you're nervous. I did because I know the feeling.
Yes. And also because I paused a few times just to kind of rethink and recalibrate the notes in my head with the action that was happening on stage at the same time. So I think that sort of gave it away. But yeah. It was
excellent.
A experience.
So let's start from the beginning because you're a lady with many hats and you have done a lot of things. And since Most Memorable Journeys talks about travel and life journeys, it's like a combination of both. I'd like to mix it up a little bit. Where were you born?
I was born in London.
Because you're an English Cypriot. Well, I don't know. That's what we call them here. For people who are listening to us from other countries, it's lots of Cypriots emigrated to the UK for several reasons, because of the invasion or because they were looking for a better life. And the people who are born in the UK are called English Cypriots. I don't think it's a bad word, is it?
No, not at all. But they call us Charlies, Billies. You've got all sorts of nicknames for us. Yeah, so I was born in London, but I didn't actually live there. So 2 weeks later, they brought me back to Cyprus. My grandmother immigrated to the UK and they lived there for 40 years. And then my mom moved back to Cyprus when she had me. So
I see. So you grew up here.
I grew up here.
You grew up here, but your mom, because you sound like an English person. That's always what surprises me. And it's probably because of the way your mom spoke to you.
Exactly, because she was raised in the UK. So she always spoke to me in English. And, I was raised bilingual. So I learned Greek and English at the same time. And I also went to English school in Cyprus, half and half. So I did Greek school and then English school.
Like many do, but you're a little bit ahead. I mean, like now there is a lot of kids going to private schools. So then what? What came after school?
What came after school? Oh, wow. After school, this is where the journey of the unknown began.
You like those?
We like those. That was definitely an exploration of the self and where I got to learn so much about myself. And I'm still learning so much. So I moved from Cyprus. I went to the UK and I studied real estate and finance. And I went to Reading University. I was there for 3 years and then moved to London. And at some point during my studies, I realized that was not what I wanted to be studying. I fell into depression, actually. That's what happened when I was studying, because I realized it was the first time that I didn't have anyone to tell me what to do, right? From the age of 0 to 20, you are told what to do and how to navigate the world. And for the first time in my life, I went to university and I had to sort of explore different avenues of myself and find out more about what I truly liked and what I wanted to do in the world. And one of the things I discovered was that what I was studying wasn't what I wanted to be doing. So it took me a couple of years after that. I had then met my husband in university, and I moved with him to Italy. He did his PhD. And since I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to be doing, I just started different businesses and I was working in different sectors. I started a dog walking business. And I even remember my father saying, I've sent you to the best schools to study, and learn about real estate and finance and become a property tycoon and whatnot. And you're picking up poo from the floor. And this was all part of my own journey, my own exploration of the self. I learned how to do marketing, set up websites, handing out leaflets. I remember just like walking around Notting Hill and just handing out people saying, hey, we've got this business and we'd love to walk your dog. And I met so many amazing people. I even remember a couple of our clients were ex-Goldman Sachs, the head of ex-Goldman Sachs, the managing director of Fabergé eggs.
Wow.
So we met incredible people and contacts that we're friends until today. So it was one of those business moves that you think will turn out into nothing, but it helped a lot with just exploring the world and getting to know more people and speaking to more cultures and learning more about the world out there.
Yeah, and I think it's all about the people's experience that you made during that time that is helping you now with what you're doing.
Absolutely.
But I want to go back to something that you said. You said until you were 20, you were more or less told what to do. You were a good girl, so you listened and you went and studied, and you studied what they told you more or less. I'm sure you had a little say in it, but generally, now in today's world, young kids don't do that anymore. They follow, not all, I'm not saying all, there is still, but some follow their dreams and they take a gap year, they discover themselves, they do. Do you think, what is better in your opinion? Is it better to be told what to do? Because you had a degree, after all, you had a degree in your hands. So is it better to listen to what somebody else tells you and have a degree, or is it better to float for a while and then decide what you want to do?
I remember when I told my dad I don't want to be studying this, and he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, okay, well, you can't just come back to Cyprus and do nothing. So you need to figure out what you're going to do. And until you figure out, you'll finish your degree. And I think that was the best advice that I received back then, because had I not followed through with that, I wouldn't have that under my sleeve. And it also gave me the discipline to just stick through with something that I had initially committed to. So when we commit to something, if we follow through, it really trains our body, our brain to actually execute and put into actions the things that we said we would do. And looking back, I don't think I would have taken a gap year personally. However, after my studies is when I started to explore and try different jobs, one of them being dog walking. I worked in the fashion industry for a while. I worked in marketing, in property auction houses. So I sort of explored my options after my studies, where I placed myself in different environments to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. So that's the advice that I would probably give anyone that isn't quite sure what they want to go towards.
Yeah, I think it's good to have something in your hand, and you can still explore, and you can even explore while you're studying. Mm-hmm. And my experience is that whatever you have done in your life, ever, whether it's working in a restaurant or walking dogs or anything, it will come in handy somewhere, sometime. Yeah. So Then, now how long did you live in Italy?
I was there for 2 years, and I was I actually worked in a research lab there. This is something I've never shared before.
What did you research?
I was analyzing data for thermal imaging. So I was supporting my husband while he was doing his PhD, and he needed
fair enough.
Data analysts. Yeah. So back then we were just engaged. Yeah. It was very hard to go into any other work environment because my Italian was poor back then. So I had to learn the language and gradually, just gaining a new skill set, which was a completely different environment to what I'd been used to. Very professorial, academic. Not something that was for me. But again, another incredible skill set that I had acquired along the way.
Yeah, I think this is exactly it. And it makes you a much more flexible person. You when you do all these different things, you will end up getting to the point where you can really do anything. You can and I think that's a wonderful skill to have, to be able, it's being adaptable, because it's not about how well you know things, but how much you can adapt to a situation, because then you can do things well.
Yeah, exactly. And I say that about myself. Anywhere you put me, I can learn something new, and I will learn it very quickly. And I think that's because I've had all of this exposure to just trying out new things, and I wasn't really fixed on one thing. Yeah.
And from what I understand, you're also the kind of person who won't just sit somewhere still. You need to do something, even if it's data research while your husband does his PhD. It's some people would just sit, and I don't know, enjoy their lives. But I'm sure you did enjoy your life, but in a different way.
Yeah, I'm not the kind of person that can sit for a long while. My brain's always creating new things. Like I'll come up with a business, or I'll come up with some sort of like I paint or I sing. So I'll be doing something to keep me creative and busy. Yeah, and learning. I love learning, and I think you can't. There's not enough that you can learn in this life.
No, I agree. And you said before, I made a note here, and you said, I am still learning. And I think we should be learning until the last breath. And there are people in this world who believe that they know everything.
And that's the
big problem.
Misconception. That's the biggest problem, because once you know everything, you're not open to learning anything from anyone else or any experience. And that's such a shame, because if there is no growth, there is no humanness, there is no evolution of who you are.
Yeah, and I think when you come from the point of view that you really can learn something from everyone, no matter what they do. I think that's what makes it interesting. Now, I remember from your speech that you lived in Saudi. That was when which years? It's because Saudi has opened up a lot, but it must have been different when you were there.
Yes, so we moved back 3 years ago. So with 2005, so in 2000, it was about 2021. So after COVID, I gave birth to Nerea, my son, in Saudi in 2020. And then in 2021, that summer, we moved back to Cyprus.
So you were in Saudi during COVID?
Yes.
Oh, that must have been quite an experience. I mean, it was an experience everywhere. Sorry.
It was. It was an experience to be in Saudi during COVID. It was an experience to be pregnant during COVID. We were there for 6 years, and COVID hit in the last year that we were there. When I was pregnant, I remember that they had placed these huge concrete barriers outside our compound. So we lived in complexes where you've got a swimming pool, a garden, and most of the expats live in there. And you can walk around freely, because in Saudi I had to wear an abaya. I had to cover my hair sometimes as well. So within the compound, you got to walk around freely and as a normal Westerner. Now, during my time there, being pregnant, I remember when I saw these huge barriers, I thought, how am I going to get to the airport? I don't speak Arabic. I can't explain to them that I'm giving birth. What am I going to do? And the fine back then was something like €2,500. So they had implemented the lower fine, but because in Saudi, no one listened to the rules and regulations, the fine had to really go up significantly to put people in place in order to not be gathering and meeting. And I remember having images of me with my tummy in the back seat and Stefano hooting along the way until we managed to get to the hospital. But that didn't play out. I actually got a letter from my doctor that said we're going to have to induce Hélène. So I had a scheduled time and date to give birth to Nerea. But it was very scary and nerve-wracking to go through all this process while being pregnant.
I can imagine, because the problem at the beginning of COVID was that we didn't know anything. We all thought that we were going to die. We didn't, when this whole thing started, I mean, now we know a lot of things, but if we go back to 2020, nobody knew anything, and nobody did. I mean, not even people who gave advice or people who decided about all the restrictions, they didn't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a very scary time. And I think what was even scarier in COVID in Saudi was that we didn't have any of our own people near us. We didn't have family. We didn't have, we didn't know how long we were going to be stuck there for. Mm-hmm. So I was about to give birth. I'm 7-8 months pregnant. And then how long are we going to stay here for? Because the plan was to come to Cyprus after COVID. And that was during the summer, where we usually had a couple of months off, and we would always come to Cyprus. In the end, we had an evacuation flight arranged from the Cypriot government. The embassy of Cyprus arranged an evacuation flight from Saudi for all the Cypriots that wanted to come back home.
And you came on that?
And we came on that. We were all wearing masks and sanitizing our hands and spraying the airplane. It was manic.
And that was your move back, or was that just a visit?
That was a visit.
That was a visit. So you still had your house or your apartment or whatever. You didn't leave?
No, we left the year after that.
Okay, very interesting. I think those rescue flights were another story. My daughter came on one of those from Argentina back to Switzerland. So it was, okay, that's another story. That has nothing. I want to talk a little bit about what you do, because I've just noted down all the various descriptions that you use. Now, what is a systemic therapist?
So I'm a systemic family constellation therapist. And this is a technique that works with trauma and any issues that may be surrounding relationships, personal issues, even health issues, that target and work on generational trauma and patterns passed down from previous generations into your own psyche, into your own nervous system. Because when we were born, we were in our mother's tummies and in her womb. So therefore, we carry a lot of her nervous system, and as well as our bloodline's DNA. So we bring a lot with us that we may not be aware of. And this specific technique works on releasing any patterns that you have from your mother, your father, an aunt that died that you don't know about, and you may have a fear around death. So they are all interconnected and related to our nervous system and our inner psyche.
I have noticed and learned, because of what I do, is that especially here in Cyprus, because of the invasion, there is more trauma than, for example, I'm from Switzerland. For example, in Switzerland, because we haven't been involved in a war for 700 years or something, I think there is a lot of work to be done here in Cyprus, more work to be done here in Cyprus than there would be in a place that has had less, but that hasn't had a war in the last. I mean, it's only 50 years. The people who were experiencing it in person, they are alive.
Yes. So my grandfather is a missing person. So he was one of the police officers that was helping people evacuate the villages in order to save themselves from the Turkish invasion. And my father was 18 and he fought in the war. So that was the generation that was impacted most. And we are the next generation after that. So therefore, there's a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that is carried through into our generation. And that's why we have such a high level of anxiety and stress that impacts this younger generation. I mean, a lot of my clients are between 30 and 50, and they suffer from panic attacks, anxiety. And this isn't just because of the conditions that we live in today's world and the impact that that's had, but it's also got to do with what's happened in this country during the war. People lost their homes. So they lost their family members. There's a lot of fear around that lives within our bones, that lives within our psyche, that still needs to be looked at and addressed. Otherwise, it will get passed down to our kids. Absolutely. And the kids of our kids.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, many people don't want to admit, or it's a stigma. They are afraid to talk about it because mental health, people go to the doctors for every little thing, they get a pill for whatever. But when it comes to mental health, there is still a barrier, I believe, for people to go and to admit. And it is such a shame because I'm a hypnotherapist. You do this kind of work. We could help so many people in a quick way. I mean, it doesn't really take that much to help somebody, but nobody can be helped if they don't come and ask for help.
Absolutely. And I think you've raised a very important issue that we have around mental health, and especially in Cyprus. There still is a stigma. It's like you need to have something that's incredibly wrong with you in order to go and seek professional help for your mental health. Whereas for me and many other mental health specialists, there's the understanding that mental health is for everyone and that everyone needs to have therapy because it supports you, can help you to release a lot of the burdens that you've been holding on to unconsciously. So it's in our unconscious. And a lot of people wait until they have a panic attack, or they have psoriasis, or they have a psychosomatic disorder, or there's a health issue. That most of these issues are addressed through the medical sector, through giving pills and patching up the problem. Whereas if you actually look at the core issue, it comes from a mental health issue that hasn't been addressed, a trauma that you have been carrying either from generations before or from your childhood, something that's happened at work that is impacting you and impacting your life. And we carry all of this in our lives. And when you look at people, you can see it all over their face. It's something that I've noticed, that trauma is written all over people's faces. And as soon as you release it, there is such a huge glow that comes onto the
shift. The moment they shift. I love to watch that. Yes.
And I see that in my office and I'm like, oh, thank God you came, because you came thinking there was that issue. And now we're looking at this whole major aspect of your childhood that you haven't looked at. It could be a divorce. It could be something that your mother was going through depression, and you've been carrying that for her, because we carry these emotional burdens. We have loyalties to our parents. And out of loyalty, out of the good girl, right, that we mentioned at the beginning, we want to please our parents. We want to make our families proud. So therefore, we carry a lot that doesn't belong to us. And a lot of it's unconscious. So until you start doing this work and looking at the core of these issues and where did this programming come from, then you have no idea, well, why do I respond this way? Why do I behave this way? Why am I triggered when someone says that?
Yeah. I mean, they say like, what you see in me is a reflection of you. So when you look, but that is you are saying this so beautifully. And I also often hear when people ask me, how much does it cost? And then I tell them the price and they, oh, that's a lot. And I feel like, I don't say anything, I feel like, you pay so much for your nails and you pay so much for your hair and for your toes. And I don't know for what else, for Botox and all this. But your mind is the most important. And as you said so well before, like most autoimmune diseases are connected to the subconscious mind, to stress. Yeah. So do you agree with me that our mental health is worth an investment?
Absolutely. And this is something that I've personally been doing since I was 20, when I first discovered that, okay, this isn't my path. Whilst also exploring myself in different professions and placing myself, I started therapy. I started learning and using different techniques that can help me with my mind and how to reprogram my mindset, whether that was going to Tony Robbins or listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation, attending his workshops, learning somatic practices and how the body holds a lot of the trauma and how it can be released through the body with somatic practices. I mean, one of the greatest tools that we have is our body. And the more disconnected we become, which the world has actually become, so it's a global phenomenon, the less we know what we want and what we truly desire, and our health deteriorates with that. So the more we come back to ourselves, whether we do that through yoga or through meditation or through mindset work, as you've mentioned, or therapy, the more we get to learn about ourselves and understand ourselves and how we respond to the environments that we are placed in. So there's no better investment than investing in yourself in that kind of way. And I'm so proud of my own clients when I see that they are devoted to this work. And it's not just because an issue's come up that I look at, okay, what options do I have and what kind of coach or therapist do I need? But perhaps, how can I improve myself on a daily basis? How do I implement the work and how do I show up to my therapy sessions to explore more of myself? Because isn't that what we're here to do in this human experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think I've learned that with every client that I have, I work on myself. I feel better. And I think all these courses that we've taken, but when I trained as a life coach, I trained as a life coach to become a life coach. But most of the work I did on myself.
Absolutely.
It was a very great experience. Time is passing very quickly. We are, but I haven't finished with you yet.
Okay.
I also have embodiment coach. Is that connected to what you said before, or is that something different?
Yes. So those are part of the somatic practices. So embodiment really is coming home to yourself and connecting to your body. You connect to your body to know yourself. And that comes through either therapy or somatic practices or learning more about yourself, whatever route you choose, whether that's life coaching or therapy work. Now, the term embodiment comes from to embody, so to be in the body. Now, when we learn a certain thing, we can learn it superficially, right? But then there's a next level where you actually implement it and you live as though you are it. So that's embodiment. That's the embodiment of knowing yourself to such an extent that you have already become it.
That's beautiful. Do you have a website? I'm not sure. And I checked out a few things. How can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram.
Okay.
At I am Hélène Alexi Ioannides.
We'll put that in the show notes so people can.
And you can find all the information on the retreats that I host and the course that I have, as well as my one-on-one sessions on my Instagram, on my LinkedIn.
When I met you, it was at the Global Woman meeting. You had just come back from the Amalfi Coast, I remember. Do you where do you travel? I want to just, before we end this, because it's most memorable journeys, let's get into the good side of life a little bit. We've talked about trauma and fixing ourselves. What do you like? Where do you like to go?
I'm a huge lover of Italy. So I love to travel the world, but I really do love Italy, and I love Greece, and I love the Greek islands. But I will say that one of my most memorable journeys was New Zealand.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Incredibly green. I remember the oxygen. The oxygen levels are just so different there that it's such a long trip, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, it is a very beautiful country. And people say, I mean, I've been, but not long enough. I need to go back. But then they say it's very similar to Switzerland, just bigger. But I think it's very beautiful. Do you have a dream destination? If I had a magic wand, and I actually have one here because I used it today for a recording. I don't know where it is now, but if you had a magic wand and you could leave, no cost, totally unimportant. Here it is. Where would you want to go?
I think I would like to explore Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
Which is on the other side of the world. It's one of those destinations that isn't very popular. And there's so much culture and ancient wisdom and knowledge that hasn't been explored there that I would love to. And the diving there is incredible.
Do you dive?
Yes.
You're a deep sea diver with a certificate.
Yes, I'm certified.
Amazing. I think we're going to have to end it here, but I really, really enjoyed this because there is lots of sites, lots of different sites. And I hope lots of people will connect with you because I'm sure that one thing that I want to say to the people who are listening, no matter where you are, before you take a pill, go and see somebody else. You can still take the pill afterwards, but every pill has a side effect.
Absolutely.
And what we do, if it doesn't work, it doesn't do any harm.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you very much for being on Most Memorable Journeys today, Hélène Alexi Ioannides.
It's been a pleasure, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me on.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.